Descendant of the Korean pioneer generation. He is the son of Susan and Cuddy and grandson of Dosan and Chang, two historical icons. Philip has extensively lectured on Korean and Korean American history and his family's legacy. He has given talks across the US and in Korea. He has written articles, participated in documentaries, and edited photos and publications. He has been an active member of community organizations concerned with promoting accurate history. Philip is an alumnus of Harvard School and has degrees in anthropology and geography from U.S. Santa Barbara.
Information. Dosan.org is an old website from a template. I'm not a website guy, but it's got a lot of information. We're doing a new one on dosan.org. There's my mom's website. But some of the things I'll talk about today, I'll post at dosan.org if you want to follow up, because, for me to talk about 140 years of history in this short amount of time is going to be difficult. And we do a podcast that we just started called Korean American Heritage, where we go through culture, history, a lot of different things about being Korean American. Amazing kimbap, the culture, the food of Korea is colorful, it's old, it's always easy to talk about and fun, but when it comes to history, it's a lot of pain. And so without a lot of suffering of the people like my grandfather, and my family, the national language of Korea could very well be Japanese. So this is, I'll tell you a little bit about me. This is me in 1973. There's a park. I'm going to go through this quick. In 1973, a dedication of a park, that's me with the long hair, meeting Pak Chung-hee. They told my sister not to wear pants because that was against Korean tradition. So don't follow tradition, especially because I'm half Korean. And so I met Pak Chung-hee, I've met 8 of the 11 presidents, I've met prime ministers, I've met the heads of the Omnibu, the CIA. I have an unbelievably unique perspective on Korea. I also surf. Every surfboard I've had has something to do with Korea on it, whether it's a red and blue wetsuit or the Korean flag. My mom made me surf. She said, that's what I want you to do. And it's really helped me a lot. I'm the first one that ever surfed and changed it up in 1990. I was at University of California, a researcher in snow hydrology. I was a researcher and owned the license to this technology at the University of Hawaii for testing box jellyfish in venomation and stings. I stung myself 25 times. I could have possibly had a heart attack, but the thing I was working on worked, and then the University of Hawaii ripped me off. While I was in Hawaii, I was the president or the executive director of the Eddie I. Kao Foundation. Why I'm bringing this up, if you ever read this book or you have a book that you want your students to learn about being a hero and a leader, Eddie Would Go is the book, and the Eddie I. Kao Foundation is a great organization. And this man, who I knew, has a lot of similarities to my grandfather, Dosan. I don't know if it's too small, but if any of you have been to Leo Carrillo State Park, the mural project was mine, and it had to do with Measure S for the Santa Monica Unified School District, trying to express how important arts are for our school. I worked on the National Registry of the Powell Street Church in San Francisco, which is the first Korean church paid for with Korean money, built in 1928. This was 94, 95. And when I had to testify at the city council in Sacramento, it was amazing what my approach was to the Korean people's approach was, because they only talked about their history. This is part of US history, this is part of California history, this is part of world history. The other thing, there's people that would try to tell you that Riverside is the first community. of Koreans in America, it's absolutely false. What's coming out of UC Riverside is garbage. These are sites on a map that I made of San Francisco. San Francisco is the most important city in all of Korean independence and history of Korean Americans. All those sites, there's 60 sites across the United States. When I finish with this map, you'll be able to click on one of these buttons, open up another window that goes to more pictures and more text about history. I did the photos for this book. That's my family on the cover. I've worked on educational books. This is an old one. You can still get them used. So this is my family. This is my grandfather, Dosan Chang, and that's my mother, Susan Cuddy. Both unbelievably great individuals as far as role models, history, civic responsibility, and basically honesty, which we don't have enough of today. My grandfather's recognized the Dosan interchange, which is the 110 and the 10 freeway. Then there's a post office on 6th Street in Harvard and Koreatown, but still today hardly anybody knows the history of this man. I made 1,000 DVDs, donated them to LAUSD to try to explain who this guy was. But still, he's not been taught properly. Here's an example. Dosan believed in women's equality. He gave lectures on it in the 1920s. No Korean president, as they should have followed his philosophy, they couldn't because it was totally against the male tradition. And so there's a lot of censorship for gender reasons, social reasons, and also his ideals on democracy. These are my grandparents, and we're North Koreans. They came from North Korea, but it was one Korea. So my ancestry, like Billy's back there, we're from one Korea. My mom used to babysit Billy's mom. Billy's mom, she's 94, 95? 97. My mom lived to be 100. She died in 2015. But that's my grandmother. Without my grandmother, Dosan could have never done what he did. My grandmother was a center of the community here from the early 1900s till the day she died. There's so much in this history, I can't tell you everything. These are my grandmother and grandfather's passports, number 51 and 52 from the king. 168 Koreans came before 1903. The centennial of Korean American history and Korean American Day are based on lies. You can read Wayne Patterson's book, Korean Frontier in America, and it explains everything. Part of this I learned, I studied it when I was in Hawaii, because the same people that commandeered the Koreans to leave to work in the sugar plants are the same people that overthrew the monarchy of Hawaii. They annexed Hawaii. Later on, the Japanese would annex Korea with the United States help. This is my grandfather in 1903. There's a lot of history I can't get into, but when he hit America through the missionaries, Presbyterian missionaries, he hit the ground running with an idea of democracy. He came to do education. There's a college in Gangnam, I think, or another town. It's the Korean Teachers University. He's been chosen as the main educator of Korean history. He wanted to come here and redo the entire Korean education system because the previous education system was based on genealogy, Chinese classics, and that kind of thing. But the missionaries started teaching them about math, science, geography, which opened up the minds of young people. Do you know who Soje Peel or Dr. Philip J. Sun is? A lot of people don't. He's the most important patriot of all Korean American history. When they have Korean American Day, it's based on false history. Soje Peel, Dr. Philip J. Sun, came here in 1885. He's the first Korean to become a naturalized citizen in 1888. He went on to go back to Korea and do a lot of things, and he inspired my grandfather with the Independence Club, which is another thing that anybody that teaches Korean American history should know about, because all of that's based on American democracy. These are the things my grandfather had to deal with as a leader in the community. This is Mayor Schmidt's campaign. It says, "No Japs in our schools, Japanese and Korean Exclusion League." That's the kind of racism that my grandfather and grandmother came to California to endure. And then on August 29, 1910, Korea is annexed by Japan, which is another thing that he had to work against. In the old days, August 29, 1910 was recognized as Humiliation Day. And it used to be celebrated, and they celebrated it here one year, and they put the Korean flag on City Hall. They don't talk about it anymore. There's a lot of history in Korean history that the Korean government and Korean education system has just whitewashed. And it's unfortunate because it's some of the most meaningful history as far as the development of democracy in Korea. My grandfather traveled the world. He's the first Korean to probably go around the world. He went to Mexico from 1917 to 1918. There's an entire group of Korean descendants down there with a rich history in Mexico. This is a map of his travels. So the first part, when he came to America through Hawaii and down the coast to San Francisco in 1902, and then the next part, when he went back to Korea in 1907, he had to escape after the An Chung-gun assassination of Ito Hirobumi, so he came across Europe and came through New York in 1911. At Ellis Island, there's a plaque commemorating his entry in 1911. These are the places my grandfather went to, all the communities throughout California. In the very beginning, the history of Koreans in California, they spread out to be migrant farm workers mostly, and miners. My grandmother was a migrant farm worker. There's other people who have a different opinion because, you know, we were poor. My mom used to sit on the floor of her house and separate walnuts. They had to get credit from the store to buy groceries. You know, people think because Dosan was this great leader that he was rich. No, never worked out that way. This is the Korean National Association. You're going to go to that building on a field trip. My grandfather started this over the assassination of Durham White Stevens in San Francisco. Durham White Stevens was a propagandist for the Japanese government, put up by the American government, and my grandfather put out basically the orders to assassinate him. He was assassinated in 1908 in front of the Ferry Building in San Francisco. But that network was the first political organization that was recognized by the United States government, and they ended up with 116 branches all around the world. How it really got its feet was there was an incident in Hemet where Korean laborers were getting off a train, and the local people were so anti-Asian because of the anti-Asian, the anti-Japanese and anti-Chinese feelings that those Asian laborers were taking people's jobs. And so the Japanese government claimed that they were in charge of these Koreans after the annexation in 1910, but the Koreans here, who really were proficient in English and democracy, got to Williams Jennings Bryan, proceeded with this case that anybody that came to America before 1910 was not part of the annexation. So William Jennings Bryan recognized that and designated the Korean National Association as a quasi-embassy. And so that's the first real big recognition, and a lot of people don't talk about that. Okay, this is another organization that my grandfather started called the Unsudan. Do any of you do leadership training? No. Well, the biggest thing, I do leadership training and I quit. Because it's like soccer teams where everybody gets a trophy. If there's no follower training, how are you going to have good leaders? And so this is what this group is. My grandfather made a group of people to modify their character. Because the biggest problem with Koreans in Korea was corruption and dishonesty at this time. And that's how they lost their country. So there's a lot of symbolism in here, but if you see the character up in the top left corner, it's a goose. And there's a whole theory on how goose fly together, and they fly in one direction. There's always somebody else that takes the lead. I mean, there's things that have been written about it. I have no idea how my grandfather figured this out in 1913. This group was started in San Francisco in 1913. But the square tail is an airplane tail. My grandfather started the first Korean Air Force here in 1920 from Shanghai when he was in the government there. There's a book out about it now, but the book is half wrong. I would say Korean American history is taught at a mediocre level at the universities all across the United States. It's a problem because they're paid to play. These are the principles. Seek the truth, right action, loyalty and courage. Character training, self-improvement, lead by example, civic responsibility, service to others. My grandfather was a service-oriented leader, not a power leader. But the thing is with the truth, like especially today, you get so many different varieties of the truth. You have to look through that truth and find out if it's really real before you accept it and express that, especially in teaching. You know, I used to say there's a ball of truth and a ball of lies. It used to be about the same size. But with social media and technology, the ball of truth is the same. The amount of deception and lies has grown logarithmically. You know, so it's very important. Social media is good in some ways, but social media also is horrible in other ways. This is my grandfather at the provisional government in 1919. And this guy on the right, David Gunn, or Hyun Sun, David Gunn was the one that was the architect for Little Tokyo Plaza. But there's so many, I could teach you an entire 10 weeks on this one picture alone. You know, I know most of these people, and it's an amazing government that saved Korea, a small group of people. And my grandfather had unique philosophies. He felt Koreans didn't love enough, and that they didn't smile enough. You know, there's so many, in his house, you know, like when you look at a placard with Korean characters on it, it said smile. You know, that's what he wanted. He wanted love, he wanted education, and he wanted people to be happy and smile. He has a saying called, love yourself, love others, and it's a direct hit on the Confucius tradition of Korean hierarchy and social stratification. What it means is, in the old Confucius tradition, and even in the current Korean tradition of some people who are very conservative, there's no love. You're already raised with people telling you there's something wrong with you. Either you're from a different area, and in Korea these days it's what apartment building you're from. If you're from the apartment buildings by the Olympics at Chamshil, and not part of a new apartment building, there's a problem there. There's a problem here too with the kids who grow up here and are more exposed to westernization and American ideals that conflicts with their parents' ideals. And it's always like, no, you do what I say. So love yourself, love others. You know, if you can't love others and you can't be comfortable, you can't love yourself. And if you can't love yourself at this time, you're no good to the independence movement. So my grandfather went to jail 6 times. He was tortured for Korean independence. He loved Korea. He loved Koreans. So recently, these 2 kids came to my house and said, we want to paint a mural. Usually the stuff that comes to An Chang-mo's family is this big fanfare. People want pictures in the Korea Times. They want to be recognized for supporting Dosan, but they know nothing about it. You know, they're not teaching. Dosan was a teacher. His philosophy is important. So these kids just came and they liked that picture, and I said, yeah, go ahead and do it. And I think it's wonderful. And what's funny is 1053 is the address on Vermont, but 1053 was the same address of one of my grandfather's headquarters in San Francisco in 1914. So it's just, there's irony in some of this. But it's like auto shop. They knew this guy from church. And so, and so they just got together, and this kid on the left owns a clothing company called Core. The kid in the middle is a muralist. He's a great artist. And I like the youthful look that they gave kids. And to this day, no one's tagged it. You know, so it's one of my favorites. Anybody here from Cohanville Elementary School? But they did a play a couple years ago on my grandfather, kindergarten through 5th grade. I talk to kindergartners, I talk to postdocs, I talk to professors, I talk to presidents. You know, I'll tell them whatever I think. Somebody told us that I'm the most dangerous man in Koreatown. I don't get paid to do this. I'm a carpenter. You know, I do this because it's my obligation to my family. So I can say whatever I want, and whatever I say is based on the truth. You know, like when I talk about Centennial Day and Korean American Day, I could sit down in a debate and take the expert Korean people you have and try to tell you that that's the right thing, and I can prove it, but it's not. This is another person. There's people in the Korean community. This is Chang Shin, and that's my mom over on the right. But this is Kugo Hakil. This is Korean school. But this woman was an underground messenger for the independence movement against the Japanese. This book, Pumpkin Flower and Patriotism, and Mansei, these are old books, but these are great books for your students. And they're written by people who participated in this. And they're written from the point of view of a child or a teacher. You know, and they're written in English, but at the time they were written, there wasn't enough English-speaking Korean Americans to really prosper from it, or for teachers to use these books. Pumpkin Flower and Patriotism about Cha Kyung-shin, the reason it's called that is because the Japanese threw her mother, who was another underground messenger, into a fire. And they tried to kill her. I mean, if you don't know about the atrocities, they make some of the stuff that happened to the Jews pale in comparison. And this is before Auschwitz and those places. And so they thought she was dead. The daughter pulled her out and made a salve out of pumpkin flower and saved her. But I knew Cha Kyung-shin. She taught my mom. She was here for a long time, but she was a teacher like you are teachers. Then there's my mom. I mean, a girl, a little tiny girl that's an immigrant, born at 1411 West 4th Street behind Good Samaritan Hospital, goes from being unheard of to accomplishing these things, and I'll show you a little about it. I mean, she's possibly the greatest Korean American woman ever to live. So there she is. This is no longer there, but it's right behind Good Samaritan Hospital. Do you know what yut is? It's a candy. That's my mom eating yut. But this is here in America. You know, they brought their Korean traditions. My grandmother could go out into the Griffith Park and bring back kosari, you know, and the fern things. And she was the one who taught all these other women how to assimilate to America. So that's my mom at their house on 106 North Figueroa on Bunker Hill. My grandmother always planted corn and squash wherever they went, because she was interested in food. My grandfather was interested in flowers. But my grandfather was hardly home. The last time my mom saw him was in 1926 when she was 11. My mom graduated. My mom went to elementary school, junior high. She graduated from San Diego State. The funny thing is, at San Diego State, there was only 2 Asian women there at the time. So she was writing all these papers, and when I looked in her jacket, I saw these bad grades on her report cards. I go, Mom, no wonder Mom never bagged on me for my bad grades. And so, but what happened is I forgot the story. My mom was prejudiced against by teachers because she was Asian. So she had a Jewish friend from LA City College where she went. She was not only a baseball player at LA City College, she was the head of baseball at LA City College, my mom. And so Sylvia Young is her friend's name, so she says, Sylvia, I'm going to change the name on my paper. Let's see what happened. Came back as an A. My mom put up with a lot of racism, so did I. And so my mom became a gunnery officer. She was a link trainer. She could take apart a 50 caliber machine gun, put it back together, load it, and shoot it. It's unbelievable, her story. So she goes to Navy intelligence, works at the Library of Congress. Here's a picture of her also playing field hockey. That's my dad. My dad was a code breaker. He spoke Japanese fluently. I have no idea how he learned it. He's Irish. Born and raised in Washington, D.C. So they had to get married in a Navy chapel in 1947 because they couldn't get married in any churches in Maryland or Virginia. When I was born as an illegitimate child. So was my sister. You know, that's how we were registered. No white people would babysit us. I had a black nanny, Milty, loved her. But my dad was unbelievable, but they loved each other. So this is my mom at NSA. She was in charge of the Soviet division. She was hacking the Soviets. She studied how Russians and Vietnamese learned how to speak English to break codes. She worked on Enigma, she worked on Vernona. She had the highest security clearance of any Asian in the United States for many years. Trump just put her on something that he wrote about Asian American Pacific Heritage Month. So I posted it on her website, and then I posted the picture of her campaigning for Obama. My mom still memorized this. She did role model stuff. This is from a couple years ago for Women's History Month in New York City, Times Square. She's got so many words, there's hundreds of words, I can't even post them all. So then we get to my uncle Philip, star on Hollywood Boulevard. He made so many movies, but he also worked with the Korean government, worked with the Korean public, did educational programs, worked for the USO. He's probably the greatest Korean American man. And they went through so much so the rest of the Korean Americans could deal with this. There's movies of Shirley Temple, Anna Mae Wong, Frank Sinatra, Charles Bronson, Steve McQueen. He was in Kung Fu, he was Master Khan. So these are things, you know, I cannot teach you anything. I don't want to teach you anything. I want to make you think. Think about what I just said. Think about what you need to know to be a better teacher. I can share everything I have. All you have to do is email me. And I will try to, I'm going to post more stuff that's access for you because I respect what you're doing. So history isn't history unless it's the truth. The stuff that comes out of Riverside, the stuff that people are telling you is absolute hogwash. And this is what happens. Your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your character is your destiny. That's what my grandfather was all about with the moral character training. So we back to these things. You know, that's just the kind of guy he was. And I'll tell you, I've only given you maybe 10%. You know, there's so much out there, and so with a few minutes left, if any questions, but I'm going to follow up. I do this. I mean, I've done this. You know, I'm in charge of the largest collection of historical documents of one family in Korea. I'm in charge of other ones, but I am a carpenter. You know, I took time off work installing shelves, but I love this. It's, you know, and so, anyways, if there's a couple minutes for questions, please ask anything. Sure.
Can you explain better the forces that you say are distorting the truth?
Well, okay, here, we're in a Korean government building. I'm an American citizen. If you get a grant from the Overseas Korea Foundation, or you get a grant from Samsung, you cannot say anything that they don't want to hear. You know, education used to be run by, like when I went to UCSB, I got a good education. I paid $242 for work. You know, education was education, now it's a business. I mean, you all know that you're suffering from funding. You know, and you're handcuffed. You know, if you get a fund from some company and you want to speak your mind, but the principal says, hey, we need this money, you gotta kind of, you know, they tell me to shut up all the time, but that's why I don't have any obligation to anybody but the truth in my family. You know, and I've worked with these people. You know, I know how to write grants, I've gotten grants, you know, but so that's my feeling. But, you know, there's got to be hope for the change, you know, and for you guys to be here, part of this wonderful program that the Korean government is putting on, and Dr. Sung and Mary Connors have arranged. I mean, it's wonderful, but I'm not going to not say what I don't think is the truth. Yes?
What's one of the most memorable experiences from your childhood?
Going for a walk when I was 4 in Virginia. Do you know who George Lincoln Rockwell is? He's the founder of the American Nazi Party. He lived in our neighborhood. So I'm walking down the street with my black nanny, my half-Korean sister, and me in the stroller. I was 3 or 4, you know, and seeing the swastika flying in front of us. So as peculiar as that, that's one of the most memorable, because you know, it was a flag to me, but when I got older and learned. But another really memorable in my teenage years was actually going to Korea for Dosan. Because I had no concept. You know, from 73 to 99, I went to Korea over 50 times and lived there for 2 years, and I was a researcher at the Independence Hall. But they hated me. I was the Antichrist. I had long hair. I was half Korean. You know, I had freedom of speech on my mind because I was born here. But, you know, I don't let that stop me. You know, it's my responsibility for my family. You know, people look at me, they don't think I'm Korean. You know? I mean, yeah, I pass for Hawaiian or Hispanic, and I don't mind, you know. So I went to a fortune teller and listened to her, and they go, well, what nationality am I? And I don't mind, you know. Yes. there's a young college girl working on the newer website. I mean, I'm horrible, but there's information there. But what I'll do is I'll make a page for this organization and I'll list books that I think might help you, documents. If you can suffer through dosan.org, there's a ton of information there. It's just not presented well. But yeah, there's a book. I mean, there's a book on my mom that's out of print. You know, that's the other thing we did, a biography of my mom that was published in 2003. She lived 12 more years and added all kinds of stuff to it. You know, so I'm thinking about writing a second edition, which I should. Hi, Mary. Yeah, over the years, yeah. When you had the previous organization, which I'm glad that you've got this one.
I'm glad I was here. It's very inspiring. I do want to add that I've been very fortunate with materials that I placed in my. I've been very fortunate. I've been very fortunate. Can you hear me?
Here, take this one.
I've been very fortunate with the materials that I have included in handouts the teachers received, and also in my second edition of my book, that I've never been told that I can't have a given article or lesson in the book, so I've been lucky.
Good, yeah, you've done a great job.
Well, it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, sure.
So my question is, how do you use your family history and use that to develop leadership within the Korean community today during the times that we're living in now?
Well, because I speak my mind, there's a Dosan Memorial Foundation. There's what's left of the Hunsanon. I don't associate with them. Their ownership of my grandfather's history has been a failure. I've spoken for 20 years. I go to St. Paul's Catholic School Church. I go to San Francisco. I gave a tour. I do whatever I can do on my free time, and I try to publish a lot of this stuff. But, you know, even at this time, you know, because my grandfather's sister was the vice chairwoman of the Women's Workers' Party in Pyongyang in 1948. We're the only family that's recognized on both sides of the DMZ. I know a lot about the North Korean stuff. And what you would hear on CNN and by all these quote-unquote experts is baloney. Even the Korean American experts that come on there, from Yale, from the CIA, it's all hogwash. You know, and so I try to talk to the kids, you know, and I go out whenever I'm invited. I'm very fortunate that Dr. Sung and Mary brought me here today. But, you know, I probably give you, and it's like I don't fit into the community, you know, because, like, we've been here since the beginning. We're the first Korean American family. As an anthropologist and a geographer, each migration from each different cabinet of each different president of Korea has brought a group of different values. But the constant value is the old Korean tradition that you listen to me because I'm older than you, no matter what I say. You know, and it's an issue. You know, so me being half Korean, because I talk about racism, the worst racism I've ever had has been from Koreans. You know, and so whatever I can do, I try to present my grandfather's story, because for the kids here, or even he's been all over the United States, when the kids say, yeah, my grandfather walked the same street that you're walking. You know, my mom was born here. You know, my mom did this, blah, 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 and it relates to them, because I come like this, I hardly ever wear a suit and tie. You know, I'm surprised I didn't come and ask Billy in board shorts and a t-shirt. You know, but anyways, you know, so I think, you know, if I can share with some of what I have on my website better than I do now, you'll have a lot of answers to a lot of questions. But I really appreciate that you are part of this and that I've been, you know, able to. Yeah.
Is there an email on your website?
Oh, flip at dosan.org. Or info, you know. I'm pretty easy to get hold of.
Can you show that?
Yeah.
Can you show the first one?
to college right after high school. I went to a military academy. But as Billy knows, usually in the kitchen jar was like an F-bomb every 3 sentences. So Korean American heritage is G-rated, where you can share it with your students.
Okay, thank you so much for your wonderful It is really touching and amazing family story, and I wish we have more time, but unfortunately, we have behind the schedule today. So next time, we will give him longer time to present. Maybe next year.
Oh,
I hope so. All right.
Thank you.
We will have